Welcome back, Visions fans. This is episode 6 of the Leonis report. Time is flying and lots of good stuff to talk about these past few weeks. But JB79 here again with myself to kind of talk about some of the new releases. We got a big collaboration. JB, want to say hi and catch up?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. But yeah, another big week here. I think it's almost like the third anniversary redux, right? We kind of had the initial, Final Fantasy VII Intergrade, and now like they've kind of have done this in past celebrations too, where like a month later there's another big collab that comes in and maybe tries to keep any new players kind of engaged. And this one is in particular is a pretty hype one, so I'm excited.
Definitely. Me too. Yeah, it does seem to be like on a quarterly cadence that they kind of roll these through. But yeah, no, today we're gonna talk through a bunch of topics. We're gonna go through some thoughts on the third anniversary, about the popularity winner, the Full Metal Alchemist collaboration, a little bit about some of the awakenings, and then just talking about a little bit about the meta. We're gonna kind of go through a new topic section here where we look at WOTV stats and kind of give our impressions of what we were seeing. I know a lot of people liked that. A little bit about Duane, and then we have obviously like a quick pick, and limited guild wars, and a whole bunch of other things. So nice big chock full thing.
Lots going on.
Yeah, for sure. So we are going to want to talk about the third anniversary here now that it's finalized and wrapped up. Did you have any thoughts initially here now that things are kind of coming to a head?
So overall, I have to say I was a bit disappointed. Not necessarily like in the units and characters. Like obviously Sephiroth and Yuffie, they're great. I love them. A lot of obviously very, very powerful and very impactful characters as well. But I think more kind of on Gumi's end and more the operational side with the anniversary, it didn't feel like a third anniversary. Like this is a pretty big milestone for the game. I feel like there should have been a bit more like kickbacks and bonuses to like the veteran and longtime players. And even in things like, packs and bundles, like even that wasn't really all that great, to be honest. I mean, we had like the pack H, which is kind of standard, but no pack F. Like there was no anniversary daily viz pack. I usually like to buy those and get a little bit of extra daily viz. Even like the whale bonuses, I thought were pretty underwhelming. I think we talked about that the other day. Like, come on, 20 scrolls, like give me a break.
Yeah.
But yeah, how about you? What were you feeling?
Yeah, so it's tough because I don't know what I necessarily would have done to improve it per se from a gameplay perspective. They obviously brought in some minor things here. They have Trials of Reckoning, which is kind of part of it. I do agree with you that the lack of the Visiback banner is a big loss for the community. I know a lot of people like that. It is a very economical way for them to get Viz. And the thing about it that I confuses me for Gumi is that it's not like it's just free viz for everybody. Not everybody gets this enormous bonus. You get a little bit of kickback, but not everyone does. So it's not like Gumi's just handing out a bunch of viz for free. You still have to theoretically like acquire the viz to participate in it. So if people are all of a sudden buying a whole bunch of like $99 packs to get all this free viz so they can throw it into the kickback, Gumi's still raking in the money from them buying those packs. So I know people have mentioned the offer wall whole thing as part of that, and I actually kind of don't buy that. Gumi at this point has taken back all of that viz and has continued to, from what I can tell from a handful of people, continue to take from their free viz stashes anything they accumulate. So the idea that like people had a bunch of free viz that were gonna abuse it, I don't see that happening because it doesn't exist. It's not there. So I kind of shame on them for not entertaining that nicety that people look forward to. But I agree, the bundles overall could have been a couple extra. The thing is, again, I don't really know exactly what people want or need at this point. I think people tend to have missed out the most on the Crystal Warriors at this point, and I feel like not having the old Crystal Warriors is kind of like, hey, take that, not for free, but you know what I mean, like give some more opportunities where people couldn't get them in the past. I think that was kind of a big miss because those characters.
I mean,
yeah,
even if it was just buy a Crystal Warrior for $40 or whatever, like
yeah,
I feel like they still don't get that the global audience likes to get something for a set price, and they will go for that. I mean, look at Duane when he was released.
yep,
He was that $40 Duane pack was hugely popular and well received. I really don't understand why for these, especially for these older units, this is essentially last year's units with the older Warriors of the Crystal. I don't know. It seems like people might take advantage of that, so I don't get it.
totally. No, and for things that are in the permanent pool or recur with enough frequency, like maybe the global exclusive units, I guess I can kind of like be a shill for Gumi, be like, no, like they recur often enough. You'll pull them at some point, but even then, it doesn't feel good to miss out on them and have to wait 3 months or 6 months or 9 months to pull them again. But the Crystal Warriors in particular, because I know there's so many people that have missed out on certain characters there that, you know, they're not that they're power crap, they're not. They're constantly getting love, but they are still, you know, intricate characters that could be used more. And so, yeah, they could have done a little more from the giving standpoint. I just don't know what content they could have done better, but I'm sure there are things they could have done to just kind of spice things up. But I'm not terribly unhappy.
Yeah, I mean, same. Like, I mean, we'll have to see what comes in tomorrow too. Like, they could unload like, a new set of bonuses here with Full Metal Alchemist, but I think, you know, like we talked about a few of those things, like the F pack or the daily Viz pack, or you know, the Viz back banner itself would have been really nice to see. So I'll keep my fingers crossed, and maybe it will come.
Yeah, and I actually did want to touch on something because I know you'd mentioned it. Where, in terms of the nice bundles, we were thinking particularly about the scrolls that you mentioned in Reincarnation. And
Yeah.
they were stingy on what they potentially gave out for scrolls. Like you said, one of those days they just gave you 20 scrolls here, and it was like 20 scrolls there, and one reincarnation lap is really nothing. That being said, I'm actually not terribly upset about that because I do think Gumi intentionally is trying to make this system a slow grind and not an immediate power creep for the game. And I think if you give whales too many opportunities to accumulate too many scrolls too fast, you create a pretty enormous gap that's not intended to happen. It's not supposed to be overnight. It's not supposed to be every single character. It is a little bit gate kept. And so if that's the approach you want to take, I'm okay with the rate that they're doing. Obviously, like, you want to max reincarnate units. They're super excited to do it. But that's kind of how they get you by the balls. Like, they got me. So when I see scrolls, I'm going to get scrolls because I know they're scarce. You know what I mean? Like, that's, yeah.
No, I agree. And especially with like the rate that they're awakening characters too, like there's no feasible way you can get to even, I mean, at this point, I don't even think even if you bought every single scroll out there, I don't even think that you can max to 2 URs at this point, because I've bought almost all of them and I can't do it yet. So
yeah, you would barely be there at 2. Right. But that's okay because you figure it's been not even a month. And so if the rate they want is 1 max reincarnate a month, I'm okay with that. It's slow over 12 months. Again, doing the kind of the bare minimum, you know, could be worse.
yeah.
Yeah.
How about the kind of, as part of it, we had the popularity vote going on. Who were you voting for?
I was personally voting a couple times for Sadali. I did not do it every day. I mentioned last week he's one of my favorite characters. I honestly love his character right now. He doesn't deserve a second iteration because he's already so good. I like to have characters get a second run if they kind of like whiffed on the first run.
Yeah.
But what about you? They went with Joom. How do you feel about that? Who'd you vote for?
I really like Joom, so I'm okay with it. I didn't vote for her, but I voted for some of the other warriors. I was kind of splitting votes between Velis and Cetia.
Oh,
So
yeah.
maybe I was just kind of throwing those away. I don't know. But
Yep.
yeah, I really like both of those units, so I'm good
Totally.
to see more.
No, and I love Joom. She is also one of my favorite units. I'd say that there's lots of them, but she as a character, you know, that's one of those things that she's already so good, still so good. Give her a second version. I'm like, I feel like give someone else some love that's not at the top of the meta charts or, you know, the usability.
They did say, I think in the video, Hiroki video, that we would expect to see it sometime next year. So
2024, yes.
Yeah, still quite a ways away, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see Summer Joom in whatever color bikini they give her. That's gonna be.
I guess, yeah, green bikini.
Right. And on the note of kind of some changes recently, they did have the Truststone update where now they're going to permanently double the dismantles. Underratedly huge in my opinion. The thing with Truststone passives, the passives in particular, right, because you're re-rolling on the passives, is that they were kind of gate kept for quite some time, where without the recent buff of them giving you the top tier passives, there's 3 levels of passives, right? The low, medium, high. Before this recent buff where they increased the frequency of the high, when I say it was kind of like gate kept, it was you had a certain amount of rolls per day. You obviously would not get the top tier passive every day. And for those people that didn't have enough hammers to like save the passives, because that's what you would do. You would roll a passive that you know is a quality one. You might not be able to use it right now, but you could spend your hammers and throw it on another stone for a later time. That requires a lot of resources that are expensive, right? So not everyone can do that. And so there was some kind of gatekeeping there for like how efficient people could quickly maximize a Truststone set. So this is a big one where obviously in addition to the recent buff, which already is amazing, but the fact that you get double of them makes this process a lot easier for the average player, which I like because now the system's a year old. It shouldn't be as hard to integrate anymore. So yeah, big thumbs up for that.
Yeah, I don't think that this was a buff that JP has, to be honest. I mean, I could be
Yeah, me
wrong on
too.
that. I'm not 100%, but I don't think I remember ever hearing about this from the JP side. So I love this change. I'm glad that they made it permanent. Kind of the cumulative effect of all of these quality of life that they've have put towards trust stones, and I think there's still another couple that we're kind of waiting in the wings for in terms of like the experience and
Yep.
the dust, I think they call it.
Yep.
But this is great. I feel like if you haven't gotten your hands in there, there's really no more excuses at this point. It's very easy to build, a couple of stones, maybe even in one day.
Oh yeah,
But
easy.
so
No, completely agree.
good change.
Yeah. There's still, like you said, a couple things I'm looking forward to. I would love at this point. Everyone talks about their filter system, how much of an overhaul that needs. I have so many trust stones at
I
this point
know.
where I need to be able to like filter on my passives at this point because I need to like memorize exactly where they all are. So that's hopefully one day
Yeah, I
down
mean,
the
it's to
line.
the point where I'm sitting on hundreds of these things, and I'm glad that I like when I first started with the system, I basically created my own way of like grouping them together that made it very easy for me to remember where things are.
Yep.
It took a while to like roll it out at the beginning, but it does make it much easier to manage without spreadsheets, which was what I was going for. So.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I haven't touched a spreadsheet in a while. I'll still use them to like game plan, but yeah, I don't track them. Good. All right. Well, let's talk about the Full Metal collab. Obviously, two big units coming this week. We have two more in the wings, but we'll focus for now on Ed Elric, who is the new free unit they're giving out, as well as his brother Alphonse. They're both 90 cost, which is kind of a nice consolation. We got a lot of 100 costs for a while there. Ed coming as Wind and Al as Lightning. Yeah, we can kind of kick things off with Ed here. I know you kind of done your due diligence already and looking ahead at what they do. Any thoughts on Ed in particular yet?
It is a free unit too. He's a free get.
Yes. Yep.
So that's awesome. And I mean, I've said it a few times, like even in the podcast here. I think that it may very well be like the best free unit that we've ever seen come into the game, or at least right there, like with Locke and maybe even. I mean, Titus was super good when he first was released too.
Yep.
He hasn't obviously aged as well, but when he first came out, I mean, I would say he was meta. He was being used everywhere.
Absolutely. Well, even
So
for PvE, Titus was still one of the greatest for a long time for his chaining ability and the slow potential and the defense break. Like he was one of the
yeah.
first that was premier in that. Yeah.
Yeah, but Ed's coming in. I really like his TMR. It gives like a regen and a single target resistance. I think that's super good
Yep.
to put on a bruiser. And that's kind of what this guy is. He's kind of like a flexible bruiser kind of unit. He's really strong against slash and pierce in particular. He can get really, really high resistances there.
Extremely high. Yeah.
He's got decent mobility, like good speed, good damage too. He can get high defense penetration. His self buff is really, really good too. It gives him like a permanent, or not, I shouldn't say permanent, but like a 3-turn dispel
Yep.
on every attack that he uses, and also protect and AP restore. So that's a really, really nice self buff. He's got a multi select that's a guaranteed hit. Awesome skill, and yeah, he can break barriers. He's really, really flexible in what he can do. He's even got Spellblade in there, so you can make him a bit anti-magic. And then he got the courage removal on Strider, which I think in a lot of cases, unless you're kind of going against magic, you probably want to take that sub. Really nice
Absolutely.
LB too. You can't forget about that one. 45 defense break, the highest we've ever seen. That's crazy.
Insanity.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I'm in agreement. Everything you just listed on paper looks exceptional. He's got that 25% strike in peril as well. And as you mentioned, he's got that incredible resistance to slash and pierce. Slash obviously being a little more penetratable, but the pierce in particular, that's one of those ones where you really can't get around it as pierce units. So that's a real nice niche that he has there. And to your point on the sub jobs there, Spellblade's nice for the magic barrier that's there. But outside of that, I do think the Strider's got some good upside for the courage removal. I know that's just a nice piece to throw on there. And on paper, he looks to be an absolutely exceptional unit. I'm a little surprised that I haven't heard more of him from the JP side of things, particularly because he is a strike unit where we are in an impending strike meta. Not saying he doesn't get used, but I don't see his name get floated around as often with characters like Alphonse and obviously Perrine as well, who's kind of part of that. But yeah, there's a lot to really like about this character, and he's got some good, flexibility in the passives, and I think it really just comes down to like some of the maps maybe not being conducive to wind, but I know that's going to be a thought process that people have to transition away from, where stop thinking of mono wind and then start focusing on some of these attack types. And to that point, I know we're going to talk about in just a couple of minutes here. We also have the vision card, which is exactly for what the purpose that is for Ed being able to tap into that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it for sure. And to your point, the TMR I think is an exceptionally good one as well. It's a cloth type, but you can get around that. That's
Like that he has 3 different damage types too. So obviously he's main strike for most of his attacks, but within that main job he does have a piercing attack too, and then obviously the slash on the sub jobs.
yep.
So pretty versatile, I think. Obviously he kind of shows his 90 cost, and that he doesn't have like, you know, beyond just being kind of bruisey, he doesn't have like the survival fallbacks like a reflex or a mortal or
That's a good point.
re-raise or things like that. But he does have protect, so I mean, you know, there is that.
No, and you bring up a good point because that is kind of the standard for a lot of these units where the ones we've seen recently, there's like 3 or 4 ways that you have to take them down or at least like penetrate through them. And he does have some AoE resistance, which is cool, but that's kind of par for the course now. So he's kind of just keeping up, not necessarily taking a step ahead, but really it's the slash and pierce mitigation. And outside of that, he does kind of fall apart. Not fall apart, but yeah, you can poke holes in him.
So I think like from, I mean, just having that like really strong pierce resistance, I think does give him like a long-term niche. Like even if he falls out, you know, of favor or out of play here in the early goings, you know, having that niche of pierce resistance, it's still like the one damage type in the game that's very hard to penetrate. So
Yep.
I do like that.
I'm in total agreement. And he does come with an accessory as well. It's Ed's Pocket Watch. For those that aren't aware of it, it does have some special conditions for Ed. It's decreasing AP consumption, his wind attack, and reaction block rate. But the big thing that's kind of more universal for all these characters is pierce and slash resistance of 8%. There is an accuracy build or a defense build or a spirit build. You have 3 different choices here. So interesting piece of equipment. I really like it for Ed. I don't know if I love it for outside of Ed. I don't know if the pierce and slash res of 8% is really a step above what you might get from like the elf cloak if you're going for some pierce res. And I'm a little biased against slash res, where I don't think I would ever pick a piece of equipment specifically for slash resistance because of how much penetration there is. If it comes kind of for free, and I think we mentioned that on the new vision card that came out for Resol, that's awesome. You're not equipping that card for slash res, it just comes with it. But this is an item where I don't know if it really offers a whole lot for people outside of Ed. But overall, statistically, it looks like a really good item.
Yeah, I think it's one of the rare items where I actually like all 3 builds. You know, I can see uses for all of them.
Yep.
Like you could totally run this as an accuracy item, and you know, just roll the Truststone passive, or just put it with another accuracy piece and stack it that way. But yeah, I agree. It's definitely an item that's definitely designed around Ed. He obviously gets 3 distinct passives just for him. That AP consumption reduction is huge, and then you can almost use this as instead of a weapon. I mean, it has a little bit of attack on there. Obviously, nothing substantial, but it does have the wind attack on there.
Yes.
So, you know, potentially, you know, if you were trying to build a little bit more defensively, a little bit more bruisey, maybe drop the weapon and run this and like some armor and something like that. I don't know.
Definitely. Well, yeah, and you always talk about, let's say, like Truststone passive economy. And when you get items like this that have so many things built into it, it reduces the amount of things that you need to do to get your Truststone passives. You can just add more things into it. So I like that. And then even from a set bonus perspective, this is very niche. But to your point about the 3 different builds, you know, I do like the aim 24 accuracy, and then it's either 14 defense or 14 spirit. But this is one of those items where if you are trying to like min max potentially some like defense set bonus or spirit set bonuses or accuracy set bonuses, and you're trying to like really like play with the stats, this is a good item for it. I don't think a lot of people are going to do it. I don't think you need to do it, but it's just a really nice thing that's unique about it.
Yep. Agreed.
Oh, good. All right. Well, on that note, we have another brother to talk about who I know has a little bit more of a splash, just given that he is a tank as opposed to a damage dealer. And so tanks obviously kind of get a little extra hype built around them because they, I think, perform more consistently for the general player base and make a really good like foundation to build around. And so, yeah, Alphonse is a exceptionally good physical tank here. There's a lot of things to like from the way he has his hate on him, where number 1, he's got innate hate of 5 from a passive, but we'll talk about in a second. The accessory also gives him another 5 hate. So he is similar to Snow in that regard, where you really can't like dispel it. You just kind of have to like hit him 5 times and then just see what happens. But he's got a lot of really interesting builds here between what he can do for movement, between move and jump, or agility and luck. He's got some good bulk things about him with the AoE resistance, the slash res. He is the first unit in the game that does have that elemental chain resistance, which I know you and I are hungrily waiting to get our hands on so we can like test the values in game just to see how impactful it is. But he's
got lab it out.
Yeah, exactly. But he's also got the reduced physical damage, but he's also got a fair amount of like personal damage, where he does have a pretty good bump of attack on his limit break. He gets up to 50 defense penetration, so he's a real nice hybrid tank style where not every character kind of gets to do both. Yeah, what are your thoughts so far on him?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he'll do quite as much damage as Snow, but I think he'll be pretty close, if not. Certainly, like once he gets his self buffs online, I think that he could be up there. But he also like gets a lot of, not only does he get the offensive buffs, but he does get some defensive buffs in the mid fight too. And then he can kind of, I love that Job 25 ability there. It's not only a guaranteed hit, but it cleanses any debuffs that are on him and then gives him that 25% health restore. So he doesn't have like the auto heal back like Snow has, but he does have this attack where he can restore a flat 25%. He gets 4 uses of it, and that's something that you can stack like with his own TMR. For example, he has his TMR gives a damage absorption effect of 20%.
Yep.
So similar to Urel, but just not quite as potent. I love he has that barrier break too that seals counters in an cross AoE, and then it decreases agility and 60% attack break.
It's the biggest in the game so
Yeah,
far.
yeah. I think the pugilist one can actually get higher than that if you get hit like a bunch of times before you use it. But
Yep.
this is like I think the highest base one.
That
But
sounds
yeah,
about
I
right.
think like normally like the 40% or 43%, they're like in between like I don't know like 12%, maybe 15% depending on of mitigation depending on the base stats of the unit you hit. So 60% like you can extrapolate that, maybe add like another 5-6% on top of that. So that's nothing to sneeze at.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And obviously another strike oriented type unit, which also has this kind of like nice pierce ability in there too, where you just can't defend it easily. But obviously we're seeing more pierce resistance in the game, so that's kind of an X factor as well. Overall, yeah, really solid character that fits into a lot of different potential strike teams, it seems. And I haven't seen much with him in the way of like pure lightning teams, but I know we're very creative here in global, and obviously we have Esther and a unique vision card too, so who knows what we could churn out there from that perspective as well. But yeah, he looks to be very, very good, and he does, like I mentioned, have that new accessory coming here as well, where I need some clarification on this in a second. I'll get to it, but there's again an aim and a shield build. I think the shield build might be the better of the two here personally.
Yeah.
uh,
I think I would go for the shield build.
Yeah, 15 accuracy is fair. Then again, if it's a tank, no, yeah, I'd go defense. Yeah, I'd get my accuracy somewhere else.
Yeah, I think that's unconditional. So it's 15% HP, and then this debuff resistance is the unconditional effects.
That is exceptionally strong. This has been one of my favorite things about Perrine with her weapon, that she has a similar effect that when you're above a certain HP amount, you can she gets all debuff resistance. So the thing that's particularly good about her is that you can stack the Truststone passives. You can't stack these here, but I know from like just like a chess perspective, when you talk about not having your defense or spirit broken, to make sure that it does not happen at all, particularly when you look at someone like Ed, who's got that 45% defense break. We know Sephiroth has one on the Telephoric Fury. There's a whole bunch of the characters that do too, obviously like Sorrow and a bunch too that are kind of gone by the wayside at this point. But yeah, this alone I think makes this piece of equipment exceptionally strong.
Yeah, really nice. And then like you think about Dialdo, he has a resistance break that has a spirit break attached to that skill, so that'll be good like in the counter element matchup.
Yep.
And obviously this kind of incentivizes you maybe to want to run some sustain or maybe a healer behind him potentially, or do some stacking of the HP absorption so that he can kind of maintain that debuff longer into the mid fight, or refresh it in the mid fight. Obviously, that where that dispel of the personal debuffs can come in pretty nice too. If you heal yourself up back above 70%,
Right.
you drop any debuffs that you might have incurred. So yeah, a lot of cool things that this unit can do.
Yep.
You did mention the hate on there as well. So that's is this the first piece of equipment other than the bow tie that we've seen with hate on it?
It is. Yeah, obviously we've had the vision cards with the hate on it, but this is the
Right.
first time there's hate on a piece of equipment, which it makes it very interesting for builds for Alphonse, where you don't know if it's going to be 3 hits, or 5 hits, where you typically lose 2 hate per hit that you receive. And so if you have 5 hate, you can take up to 3 hits. If you have 10 hate, you can take up to 5 hits. But that'll completely change the AI of your fights if you don't know how many hits your Alphonse will take, or your enemy will take, before you start going to other units. So that's a very, very strong chess piece in my opinion, to, if you're saying like, we talk about like wall building and whatnot and not knowing what's going to happen, the difference between having this on and not having it on could completely change the AI of what your enemy does. So,
Yeah, really, really cool.
yep. And then alongside of both of those units, we are getting a new vision card as well, and just kind of swapping to, again, my favorite visual of these, JB79 preparing these. This is a brand new vision card here where just kind of going over some of the stats here on the unit itself. It's 10% slash and pierce res. JB's made the prediction, I think it's a good one, of 10% HP and unit res for the Elrics.
Yeah, so they did tease that in the news that there's going to be HP and unit resist as bestowed. Yeah, I just kind of took a stab at what I thought they might be based on recent trends. If it does end up being 10 unit resist, like in addition to like the 16 there that's on the party effect, like that's really, really nice.
Definitely. And obviously we're talking about Ed and that slash and pierce natural resistance. This obviously goes with it, but more than anything, we'll talk about the jobs it applies to in a second, but this is one of those cards that's exceptionally strong because it's got two of our favorite metrics on it. It's 18% agility and 16% unit resistance. The 35 strike attack obviously goes very, very well for, you know, fist users who don't typically get those external modifiers very easily. And so this is a very crucial card to bringing in some of that strike meta that you see, where if you were to look at the units here, obviously, you know, not all of them are 140 capable, but you look at units like Snow, people have had some success with Raldor on occasions. Perrine is one of the better units that you can potentially put it on, if not the best. She is a pretty critical part of that. Alphonse is as well. And then I think Ed's probably the last big name here. Obviously, there's other characters who are going to benefit from it, but this is a very good card for ushering in that meta. Yeah, what do you think about it?
Well, you don't like Lamiga? We're gonna see a Lamiga meta after this card comes out.
Probably never. Probably never.
Yeah.
The Ziza meta. Yeah, finally.
Oh,
Ziza
wow.
3 years later. Yeah.
No, but this card is and these two units are a big part of what makes that fist comp go. This card, it's similar to like a couple of others that we've seen in terms of like the agility and unit resistance combination. Fire has one with Brachiosaur, and Eliphacaris for Earth is another one, but they aren't quite as strong as this one because they don't have that 18% agility. So
right.
With these job cards, they do get kind of those juiced up party stats, so that's super nice. And obviously, in addition, just to the defense effects, you have really nice offense here with that strike attack. So
Totally.
I'm really excited to get my hands on this one. I don't often like rush cards, but this one might be an exception for me.
Definitely, absolutely. And I know I'm about to get a lot of hate too for not mentioning Tifa in that last list of strike units, but no, even just when you talk like the variety of who else can equip it to, obviously not everyone needs the strike attack, but there's a fair amount of supports in here, or characters that are support capable. And obviously start looking at cost limited things like Shell in terms of what she does for time mage things. Minwoo, I know some people have started to use with Hyo and kind of that bulkier bruiser team. Abnelis even does have some good AI for healing, depending on the comp you're going against. On Lightning, you have Resnick, who's obviously like one of the top tier healers, and a little power crap, but there are a lot of people that still use her as you go down the Guild War ranks. So when you talk about these bruisers with the support that also go with this card, like that by itself, you could get very creative with this.
No, I think when you're talking like from a job perspective, when you see those two effects of agility and strike resistance, this is going to be a core card for any group that can use this card. So even, I mean, we hyped up Fist a lot, but this is like a huge card for the other two groups on here, which is going to be Devout and then Pierce as well.
Yep.
So can definitely do some experimenting a little bit with those groups on this card too.
Yeah, most definitely. So very happy that that's coming in here. And then on those topic of characters, we do have some unit awakenings and MA2s as well. In particular, Cetia and Ranan, two of the kind of more original units that were released. Overall, I think they're pretty good upgrades for what their original niche is. Just kind of recapping for some people here. I know Cetia's on her MA2 is getting 20% extra magic resistance, some crit damage, and some AP generation upon critical hits, which I really, really like. They're kind of building this critical build for her. It's one of the more like underrated mechanics in the game in terms of damage output, and now that you're throwing in here the AP restoration on the crit as well, obviously a lot of bow units and missile units like to really lean into that. Her 140 ability, they're giving her initial AP to start, which again, huge for what some of her AP costs are. Some extra defense penetration, and then on that topic, thermal exposure, which is her giant, heal down and whatnot, is getting a minus 25% crit evasion to those people. And it's a 25% crit rate reduction for them as well. So again, you talk about like playing with that mechanic. I do think that's a pretty nice, I don't want to call it a niche for her, but there's not a lot of characters on the fire side of things that really lean into it. And I know you thought of this as a potential talking point where there are some overlaps with Hyo in terms of the AoE healing power down and what they offer for like just counter chance and whatnot. But I like that they're giving her this niche. I don't know if it's gonna change a lot of things, but I think it's a really good change.
No, this is a really nice upgrade. The magic resistance, I think, it's kind of weird. Like you don't really think of like you wouldn't want like a bow user being a really strong magic bruiser, but she can just walk into the fight now with 50% magic resistance. She obviously has a buff that can give her even more. She can get up to 70 with the self buff. So like pretty much for free at that point, like you're really resistant to magic. There is magic res penetration out there, and specific a couple of specific units can get pretty high. Overall in the game though, I think that they have been a little bit more selective with that one. You think of a lot of the mages that are out there right now, units like I don't know, Halloween Lucia or Dark Fina.
Yep.
Neither of them are really exceptional with their magic res penetration, so that could be an interesting kind of maybe niche for her, like if you maybe face some of those type of teams. And then maybe even like the Skahal matchup, I think she can actually do pretty well there. Obviously Skahal is just completely overtuned and insane. He can just two-tap anyone, including Cetia, even with these buffs. But being able to take a hit from Skahal is nothing to sneeze at, in my opinion.
Definitely.
Especially when she can dispel re-raise. She has that thermal exposure you mentioned that cripples the healing and counter, which is a big thing with him. So just like you talked about in your Hyo review, she has a lot of the same capabilities there. So
definitely, yeah. So I like it. It's just a different way to approach the fight. But yeah, overall, thumbs up to that. And I am looking forward to kind of playing with some of those crit rate numbers, as we are seeing more characters with crit damage, and a lot of those crit damage numbers are bestowed on their like equipment or whatnot. I know Yuffie's one of them. Like the Shuriken gets extra 15 crit damage, so there's something to be said there for like being able to mitigate that and reduce the enemy and just increase your own. So yeah.
Do you think it's going to be enough to get her away from Bells? It's always been a crutch for her, I think.
Actually, I think it does. I think it does. I think that 5 AP on critical hit, as well as her 140 having the 15 initial AP. I know one of my things is kind of the trade-off. A lot of characters, the missile units in particular, do tend to get one shot or at least two shot. And so for many of my missile units, I'll oftentimes throw on the TP Truststone set, which does decrease AP consumption on the theory that the HP set bonus isn't really going to make a big difference between them living one hit or two hits, but at least they might as well get some extra decreased AP consumption. So I have personally found success with that, and I know there's opportunities for her to do that. So yeah, probably lessens the reliance, but then again, always map dependent. Comes back to that. Maybe.
Yeah,
depends on the map. Yeah,
agreed.
Yeah, and then we have Ranan coming in here too, which I think most infamously might be my biggest whiff on a character rating ever. I have some serious copium for this character because on paper he just looks so good. And we've talked about it time and time again. He's held back by some AI issues and some agility issues, and some accuracy issues, a lot of big things that just kind of don't fare well. But they are giving him 10% agility, which does have a nice little bump to at least get him closer to that, UR average. It's not exceptional. It's a good one, though. They are also reversing, essentially, his pierce resistance, where he's currently minus 15. They're going to give him 20 to give him positive 5. That's enormous, in my opinion, where we talk about, like, Flagbearer, Glaciella, and a lot of those pierce units. He's just kind of unusable for the threat. And there's a lot of units that have pierce on sub-jobs, too. So getting rid of that. And yeah, you just talked about magic res penetration. He's got 15% that he's getting there. Whole bunch of stuff, 15 area resistance, and then the big thing too is the upgrade to his 120 on the Transcendence here, where it's also going to become a multi-target select mechanics. Tons of good things. Have you any thoughts about him in particular here?
I mean, if you look at kind of the totality of all the units getting upgraded, this is well above average. Like, they gave him some love here. He needed it. He has some deficiencies. So I think overall, if I'm a Ranan fan, I'm pretty happy with this. I think that there's going to be room where maybe, with the multi-selects, that's really strong. Like you can get around a lot of these pumped up area resist that units are getting nowadays. Yep. Don't sleep on that skill. And then having that additional speed, I think is really going to help him maybe get another 5, maybe 6 agility. Do you see him being used maybe with Skahal and Resnick and maybe fighting off some dark comps? What do you think of that?
I mean, I could see it when you talk about that synergy. Like, I think Summer Helena has a little bit of an edge on Skahal here, even with these upgrades where she's just got that AoE resistance down on her limit break and a whole bunch of other. She's got guaranteed hit, so I think she's probably still a smidge more well-rounded. But there is something to be said for his innate bulk that she doesn't have with his barrier, and then the devout passive, which gives him defense and spirit, and he's getting 15 area resistance here. And I don't know for certain, but obviously I want to see the effects of him having the pierce resistance completely reversed. So that bulkiness to him is definitely a nice feather in the cap. I don't know if he's going to bump anyone out of the current Skahal comp. If anything, it might just be like a different part of the Swiss Army knife when you talk about lightning magic teams, or even just like maybe multi-element teams when you start brainstorming, like, I don't know, lightning and fire, things like that. But yeah. What about you?
Or maybe if you didn't if you didn't pull Summer Helena, I think that maybe he could slot in and
Absolutely.
be serviceable at least. So
Absolutely. Yeah, and to your point of the Dark Killer, like I'll hold off on that, but I can't see why not. Because again, if you talk about beating Dark, Magic is one of the more consistent ways to go. But I do think Dark Souls are going to run into some problems here with the Strike meta on its own, where Duane has an enormous weakness to Strike, and Sephiroth technically does too. That I don't know if you're going to need Ranan to really do much of that, but certainly possible. Yeah. That leads us to our second part of the agenda here, the War Room, where we talk more about map analyses and meta snapshots, PvP results. And I know we're kind of tweaking this one this week to look at a little more about metas in particular. So a few of the things we wanted to look at was the actual formations being used on attack and defense at various ranks up and down the Guild War ladder. And so we're going to look at top 10, and then we'll look at 10 to 25, 25 to 50, and then 50 to 150 to kind of just see how things are shaping up, at least over the past 2 weeks, where our date range and all of these are the beginning of April, the 5th, up until as recently as yesterday. And yeah, obviously there's little things to break down in each part of these rankings, and you probably see the most variety here in the top 10, where there's obviously a lot more coordination, a lot more of the chess game going up in terms of predicting what your enemies are going to use. Unsurprisingly, Sephiroth is the top here, at least on attack. Defense, you've actually seen some shifts here. Wind has done pretty well, and that's mostly just because of how Fire Evade is a little more prevalent here in the top 10. But yeah, anything surprising here to you, JB?
I don't think so. I mean, that's kind of the four elements I would expect to see right now. You got lightning, fire, wind, and dark. But yeah, obviously Sephiroth is leading the way. If you look across the ladder, he's definitely making his impact, and so I'm not surprised to see him here either.
Yeah, we'll definitely be seeing more of him in a second. I think two interesting things to point out real quickly here. Number one, there is Sakura hanging out here as the lone light unit throughout the week. She has actually been a staple of VIP's offensive builds to take out a lot of these dark teams, where we'll have like 10 light teams, and it's like Sakura, Warrior Light, and I think Sylvie was the third. And yeah, we're basically like 6-starring all these dark teams, which is why you're starting to see some more variability on what people use on defense here, because they can't as simply use dark, because people just start to prepare for it, right? So you got to mix it up a little bit. And Fire Evade is a good one, where it almost becomes like an accuracy check, where if your enemy doesn't have enough accuracy to clear your teams, they lose, which is why you're also seeing Wind be the choice here to kind of offset that, and some random lightning to kind of throw people on their toes. But yeah, very interesting how this is kind of changed. And we'll see a lot of this kind of echoed just to a more diminished degree here, or more exaggerated degree here. Rank 10 to 25. So a couple different colors here, way more on the Fire Evade side of things, I think more prevalently. Obviously, Sephiroth is kind of really spacing himself out here, but yeah, and he's
well above everyone.
Yeah, still seeing Lemurai too. Him and Lemurai on this map, Heistaga and Quicken is just far too strong, and obviously the cure spells and the random raise every now and again. But yeah, anything here? I know Howl has recently kind of kicked on the edges of top 20 here. Any thoughts on this area in particular?
Well, the fire is a big reason why. Quite a few of us in my guild invested into the Fire Evade team, and it's really been carrying us. So there's days going by where I'm getting 3 and 4 defenses. So
right, because it becomes an accuracy check. Yeah, if you have like a lone character or two and they simply can't hit them, or they start whiffing and they have a 0% hit chance, like you'll just win off attrition.
So this is pretty much what we're seeing. We're right there in the top 20, 25. So yeah, some familiar faces here for sure. I think Sephiroth, Lemurai, and either Duane or Halloween Lucia, or even Dark Fina sometimes is probably the most popular dark team that we're seeing. And then the Fire Evade, pretty standard, Sorrow, Yuffie, and Mons. Sometimes you might see Ildira there instead of Sorrow. For Wind, that's more of like an attack thing. I haven't seen it too often on offense, but we did actually run into Mako, who was running a full Wind on defense, and that definitely stifled us a bit. So
definitely.
Yeah.
Nice, nice. Right, because not a lot of people are running ice on this map. Ice's strength
No.
is not for sure these short range maps. Spoiler alert, just for fun, I actually have been running ice the past 2 days. Because of those wind teams we're talking about, I've been running Zoma, Winter Ravias, and Snow Comp, and like 6-star and win like no one's business. It's been fun, but
That's pretty sweet.
yeah. I know you mentioned Eldyra. I am a little surprised to not see her bump up here. Just with the three of them, I know she has actually proved to have some upsides to that Sorrow doesn't have. Where Sorrow really hard countered ice really hard, and without that ice, he doesn't lose value. But Eldyra does some good like things on her own too. So this is good to see. I like this.
Yeah.
All right, so we keep going down. We're going to 25 to 50. Again, getting a little more high level in what you're seeing for Dark here, seeing some colors drop off. You are still seeing a lot of the Fire Evade here, which is actually, in my opinion, nice to see given how prevalent Sephiroth is, because I know a lot of people do struggle against Sephiroth when it comes to evade teams where if you don't do it right, he can just wipe you out with the limit break. He's got some guaranteed hit. Dark Lucia also does too. But yeah, I think this is pretty cool to see here too. Interesting to see Duane creep up here on the defense side of things, but
yeah, just 2 colors there on defense.
yeah, I mean, hey, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I mean, they are two strong elements, and we'll obviously see the same when it's go to 50 to 150, with the exception of Starlight Elena hanging on it here on defense to
holding strong there at pretty much the same level, for a while now.
Yep. Yeah, just seeing more stratification of Sephiroth. I do think it's very interesting that you've seen Lemuray kind of drop off here. And I would imagine probably just comes down to people having difficulty getting the Time Mage timing right. There is a very specific agility tuning you have to do with like your unit affinity and the buff order to make sure that she gets all 3 people at once. And if you're not properly building your team for that, it'll fall apart pretty quickly. So easier to go with
I think that it comes down to too that some people just really haven't thought to build her. If they haven't seen her being used in the past, like in the Joker Leela meta, I think that was another one where people like to use her quite a bit. Because I mean, even in my own guild, there's a number of people that haven't built her up yet. So I think the further that you go down, that's probably just going to get even more.
I absolutely see that. It's true. That's true. Well, good. So that's essentially what we wanted to look at from the meta perspective, just observing attack and defense and character trends. We'll try to keep implementing this a little bit as we go on. But yeah, always good to see how things shake out. I am slightly surprised to not see as much light on the attack side of things, because the way I've always kind of figured it, when you know where your enemies are running for defense and it's prevalently dark, you can almost meta team your attack team to be like, all right, I'm just going to like go hunt dark and just 6-star all day. And that's what happens in top 10. I'm surprised I didn't see more of the light on attack on those lower ranks.
So I think that comes down to also like the key to that team really is having the Final Fantasy 14 Scions card. If you don't have that, I think that build is not nearly as effective. Even some people haven't built up the White Dragon card, which is another important piece of that comp.
Yes.
Obviously, that's a freebie. So if you haven't got that White Dragon card from the next raid revival, I always recommend people that's the first one that you should probably get. But yeah, I agree. I do the same thing. But I've been able to get 6-star with my Fire Evade team just as easily. So I'm just gonna keep doing that.
Love it, love it. So
that way I don't have to 140 wall and waste an antler on him right now.
Nope, definitely not.
I'm still waiting for my 3 freebies, Gumi. Where are they?
Yeah, I could use them. I've been awakening a fair amount of units here, and probably even more soon. But yeah, so
one thing I want to say on the meta snapshot, definitely give us feedback on this, guys. Like this is a new kind of section for us. If there's more that you want to see there, or maybe different views, give us that feedback, and we can work on that.
Absolutely. No, thank you for mentioning that for sure. So, good. And on the topic of meta, obviously we've seen Duane come into his own here with an awesome shiny new vision card and a great 140 and mastery upgrade, and the ability that comes on that vision card. Yeah, any thoughts on his impact so far here?
He's good. Going back to looking at Duane's upgrades in JP, we were waiting on this Mastery 2 that really was a poor Mastery 2, in all things considered. Nobody was excited about this unit. Everybody thought that he was going to be bad, and then just months go by and we don't see him get upgraded, and then people start thinking, hey, is this guy going to get kind of maybe the hookup here in Global? He ended up getting it. He got this amazing vision card, and people are using him. We saw him there on the charts. He's good. He that one ability with the courage removal and the guaranteed hits, that was the one thing we said last week. I think I said, I hope they don't give him a guaranteed hit. I think it's going to maybe make him a little bit too good.
Yep.
Is he too good? I don't think that he's too good, but he's really damn good, especially for a character that a lot of people have and can awaken very easily. Yeah, and I think that it's going to extend the legs on this dark meta for some time. I think that it does make that light killer or dark killer comp a little bit, maybe a bit more randomness to it because he does have the imperils there.
Yep.
So if Duane is built maybe a bit anti-light, maybe he can stand up against that light team. I'm
Yep.
not sure. Have you guys seen that at all?
A little bit. There is still some RNG with the disable proc on his AoE. That's always the X factor you're going to run
Mhm.
into. But no, I haven't not dove terribly deep in that light versus dark matchup yet. But I do know it does do exceptional things for Sephiroth just by giving him access to imperils that Sephiroth doesn't have innately, in addition to having some extra chaining potential with the slash, where if you're looking at the other units, Dark Leela the Bold, is a good candidate. She just doesn't do as many good things as Duane, and him having that initial hate has some real tangible effects on the battle that she can't replicate. And obviously we're seeing more and more like healing power down and courage removal, so what used to make her like abundantly strong is kind of neutered to a degree. So yeah, Duane in particular being able to have that imperil and the AoE disabled miles above her, and obviously different than what Shadow Links on Ice can do in Dark Fina
Yeah.
and Dark Lucia. But
And he is that armor wearer, so he can wear
Keenblade armor,
Keenblade, which
huge.
is massive.
Yep,
And he could even wear, Kane's TMR. It's another great one.
absolutely.
Depending on the map, as
Yeah,
we like to say.
yeah,
Um,
yep.
but
No,
Keenblade is obviously the big one. When you talk about, especially stacking that with Lemure and what she can do, all of a sudden you can double turn somebody very very easily.
yeah. So what a lot of people are running here is essentially where Sephiroth will move over and Dwayne will Lemray will cast Ixtaga, Dwayne will Keenblade them, and then Lemray will use the Dark Leela. I was just kind of pooping on her a second ago, but the Dark Leela TMR, which is the AoE agility up. So all of a sudden it's like this unstoppable like train that just kind of gets off the off the rails. But I'm happy because I if you rewind a couple of weeks, I think there was a few podcasts we did where I was like kind of betting on Dwayne getting something here because I didn't think he was that far off. I really didn't. I kept talking about tank compression and how like his role isn't as far off as it was a year ago, and there's still a lot of things to like with the imperils that he brings. His survivability is not like crazy far off, given that he's got protect on the sub job. So yeah, a lot of good things here given what they've done with this vision card, and then just on that note of dark attack usage, so this is taken from the day before he was released up until yesterday. 411 was the last Tuesday, and yeah, you can see on attack here on the top half he's definitely seen some increased attack usage by a fair amount, and on defense too, which is a good thing here, and you are seeing some peaks and valleys, and that's actually the top 10 swaying things where both VIP, and it was one of the ranked 3 or 4 guilds where we both ran Dwayne walls like almost immediately, and for some pretty good success. So yeah, a lot of good things to like about him there.
What do you think about the impacts of this current map, and do you think that's kind of making him look better than he is? Or I mean, because I think that he's always been a unit that's he wants to get in there quickly and just kind of pounce on you. And this map obviously works really well for that. So do you think there's any external factors there, or do you think that this guy's here to stay?
I absolutely think it's map favoring him at the moment. To your point, it's kill things quickly and end the fight. That's you don't need to get hit 10 times in order to win a fight. As long as you just kill people quickly, and he does that very well. That being said, I think if you were to like think of the other dark options, I do still think he's a top contender for being one of the strongest, most well-rounded of the bunch. Where obviously you have your magic synergies, but we've seen the vision card start to skew a little more toward the physical side of things with the hero vision card. Now Dwayne's vision card, where if you consider the impacts of those and what the Anima Vision card does with its unit res. I think that Dwayne has a natural lasting synergy that some of the other dark units don't, but I think he's about to get absolutely thrown off the planet Earth with the minus 15% strike resistance that he has. Where we talk about
Yep.
these strike units coming in, and he doesn't have the barrier break that like some of these units have too, and I think he's going to get very quickly exposed to the top end of the game. But I think for the majority of the player base, he's still going to be exceptionally strong to pair with Sephiroth. And we've seen Sephiroth here for where that line is. Dwayne is going to probably stay right near him, I would think, in many of those comps. And you're seeing here, this is kind of a snapshot out of the more common teams. And yeah, obviously the most common is, Lemure, Dwayne, and Sephiroth, but there's a couple variations you could certainly run. And we also have a couple new game modes here. We have both Quick Pick and another limited Guild Wars coming in here. We will briefly look at the map here. It's Plains 4. Does Nullify, Silence, Paralyze, while also giving TP up and an evocation gauge rate increase by 100%, so essentially double.
Yeah, so this should be, I think, an all new map for us. I don't think that we've seen this one before in Quick Pick anyway.
No. No, you're absolutely correct. This is a new map, very long, top to bottom.
17. Yeah, we don't
This
often see maps this long.
No, even if you kind of did your initial starting spots on that second row there, that is still exceptionally strong. And for those of you that are reading this, yeah, you have three little bridge choke points here, so a ton of, I don't want to say randomness, but you could certainly get diverted in ways by enemy hate that you don't intend to. It does seem like it kind of raises to a relatively even flatness here in the middle where you're going height 4, so some interesting things there from like an AoE attack perspective. This is going to be a very interesting map.
Yeah, so those choke points there in the middle and like the length of it, I think that we're going to be seeing some missile teams here. This is looks like a great missile map to me.
I would think so. Like you have to, or yeah, there's the range. This is the kind of map they excel on too, because you do have the opportunity to get some good buffs off here, where you really need like 2 or 3 turns reliably to buff sometimes as those missile units, and this certainly gives you the opportunity to. But this will be very interesting.
What do you think about quick pick in general? Like, what do you think of it as a mode?
I think it's absolutely my favorite mode of all of the modes. I think it's so much fun to create 2 different teams where you can essentially play this rock paper scissors when you get matched up that you don't know which 3 your enemy is going to pick. I've seen people that, you take a risk and gamble, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I've seen people get really creative too, though, with being able to hedge the weaknesses of their teams by throwing in like a character to kind of offset. I don't know. There's a lot of strategy that goes on there that I think is very creative, while still like limiting the randomness of it.
I like it too. I wish that they would add the manual option for it like we have in class match. That's my one big gripe with the mode. It seems like it should be easy enough for them to do it like we have it in the other areas. So Gumi, if you're listening, please consider that.
I can't say why not. And actually, low key, one of my favorite things about it, this is super underrated. It's not technically a multi-room, which means if you shut down your app or it crashes or you shut your screen off or something, you don't get auto disconnected and lose points immediately. A lot of these other class match modes, that is the case where it's a live multi-room. It's like I said, you drop your phone and press a button or do something stupid, you lose the match. And I hate that X factor variable. This though is completely auto. You could skip the battle if you want. I do like that as a small quality of life upside that the others don't have for someone who does play on auto the majority of the time.
I think they're also coming in as a bonus. We got arena and free match 5 times medals too, so that'll be good to kind of help farm up that gear too. So
yep, yeah, there's a lot going on for some good PvP things, and that goes well with limited guild battle, where some people are able to kind of take their foot off the pedal a little bit because it's just a little more relaxed atmosphere. You're kind of in a different area with your matchups, and the cost restrictions kind of limit what you can do anyway, so it's not a whole lot of game planning per se. The new one, it's we're getting a map here, Map Fortress. They are doing courage nullification and a cache time reduction.
So I don't know if you remember this map, but this was also like a big missile map. I think it was one of the very first time that we got limited guild battle. It was this map, if I remember right.
I would know it if I saw it. I don't tell from the topography here at the moment, but all right, missile units inbound, which we haven't seen them in. We went from a really small map to not a really big map, so I guess we'll have to get newly accustomed to that.
But the cost is only 210. I think that's one of the most restricted we've ever seen. So that's you're not going to be able just to throw out a bunch of 100 cost units this time.
No,
you're going to have to get some lower cost ones in there.
If I had to make a prediction, I think we're going to see a whole heck of a lot of SR Little Leela, Dark Lucia, and Sephiroth because they equal exactly 210.
Yep.
Yeah. Now again, that map maybe not suited for them. Maybe we'll get creative. Honestly, I hope so. I'm so sick of that team. Just like, I mean, it's fun. It was good for like a couple of weeks, but my God, I would love to be able to see some variability thrown into it. That's the whole point of cost limited things, is that it gives other characters a chance to shine. And when you repeat the same 3 characters over and over, it loses that.
Agreed.
Good. All right. Well, then that brings us to the Leonis Spy Report. And this is where we look a little bit ahead to JP news and things that have just recently been released. And there's a big live stream yesterday, and we'll talk about this in a second. Massive new collaboration announced for the 3.5-year anniversary. We did get a new unit released first that we'll talk briefly about, Galzahk, or Balsack, or whatever people want to call him for a fun name. For those that don't know him from the lore, he is the former Arms Guild dealer that Garvel kicked out and walking around doing whatever he is now. Just from a character perspective, it is interesting that he is a new 50 cost unit. They do appear to have given him a similar mechanic to what they did for Velis in terms of like AoE heals and the AP regeneration. It's the main job Devout. So that Velis mechanic is his 120 ability, which is kind of like unique for that Devout job. But they've also given him the Time Mage and White Mage, which I think is kind of ironic for a former Arms Guild dealer that they made him a healer. Support, I get, but yeah, this is a great 50 cost unit in my opinion. Have you seen him at all, a little more up close?
So I mean, I looked at the kit and I kind of played around with some builds. Like anytime a new unit comes out, I try to throw it and mock up some builds for him. I was able to get him to. So first thing is his Teachings of Preservation buffs. There, it's the one that gives like the 30 defense and spirit. That one for him is instant with his upgrade. That is huge for that buff because a lot of times that one is almost unusable because it has the cast time on it. It makes it pretty hard to time it.
Right.
And then they like to spam it if they don't hit everybody with the buff. But that being instant, I think is big for him. With that 20 AoE resist and then the 30 defense and spirit, I was able to build him up. I want to say I had him at like 70 defense, 60 spirit, and like 60 AoE resist after this buff kicked in. So pretty significant. He's got some nice healing power there. And then that job 25, which is kind of like a snow healing. His version is instant cast, like he doesn't no cast time on that, which is nice.
Oh, that's big.
It doesn't give quite as much AP on there. It's just 10, but with his with the amount of healing power that he has there, he's got pretty decent magic. He's going to be able to pump out a bunch of healing, which Earth to this point they haven't really had a dedicated support unit. So I really think that he's going to be really nice for limited cosplay for them.
I took the words right out of my mouth. I was just about to say that. I was actually so desperate for an Earth healer recently for regular Guild Wars that I was actually entertaining Livaal, the Arithmetician and Black Mage. That's for Earth. That's how desperate I was for like some kind of Earth healing. And yeah, I think he's an exceptional addition to that cast. I'm kind of at the opinion at this point where if they release a new like 50 or 60 or 70 or 50 or 60 cost unit, they're immediately going to be amazing. Like the precedent that they've set with these units is so good that they seem to be like instant starts that anytime you have a limited Guild Wars, you just inevitably have to build around that new 50 cost unit because they're just so much stronger than what was formerly there.
Yeah, I mean, in this one, obviously, all those free, they're coming in free for us, so I'm excited to get my hands on him.
Yeah, for sure. And then we also have some huge news here with the Final Fantasy V collaboration. A lot of people were taking bets on which numbered Final Fantasy was going to be. Have you played 5? Are you excited for this? Like, are you surprised?
I honestly have never. I mean, I've started 5 multiple times, but it was never out in the US. Like when I had like Super Nintendo and like PlayStation, it came like I think later on, maybe like some of the handheld systems. They finally released like an
Yes.
official translation.
Yes.
Prior to that, like I had tried to play like some emulated, like fan translated versions a couple of times. So I really haven't played it all that much. I do like Bart's and kind of the characters just from what I've picked up from other, FFBE and like, Record Keeper and some of the other gotchas I've played. So I kind of know what about the characters and I like them. I'm not like over the moon about it, but I think it's cool. And I think that the characters look incredible. Like the Amano artwork at that point was like, he was like in his absolute prime. So I love how they've kind of fused the WOTV and Amano artwork there. Yeah. How about you? What do you think?
Same. No, I'm the same. I played Final Fantasy V for the first time on PSP because they dropped like a version of the game on the PlayStation Network store that was available for handheld. So I played it then for the first time. Underratedly very good video game. I honestly don't remember much about it other than absolutely loving it and like putting it in my top 5 for a while. And I'm in agreement. The artwork is amazing. I first got my real glimpse of them when they brought them to life through the Dissidia fighter games, where they kind of gave a lot of these numbered characters some real like life and artwork. And Bart's was really awesome there. To see Faris and Lena, very cool because they don't get any love that Bart's does. At least him being the mainstay character is featured in a handful of things, and they've like kind of been around randomly here and there, but really nice to kind of see them get the forefront. I haven't looked much at their kit yet. I know there's a lot of information out there, but it's kind of we got enough to handle with the FMA collaboration that I haven't really done a deep dive yet.
Yeah, I know that Bart's is going to be a light unit and he's going to be a free
Yes.
100 cost.
Yep.
So something we haven't seen since Thancred. So hopefully Bart's is going to have his limit burst.
I think they learned. I think they learned.
If he has that, then I think that's a win.
Yep.
Ferris is super cool. I like that. I kind of like the whole pirate vibe that she has going on. And Sildra, could it finally be our first water esper like since the first year of the game?
It has to be. It has to be.
Yeah. It has to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to hold my breath, but I feel like Sildra, like it was also known as Hydra, I think, in some translations. It's a big sea monster. I mean, that just means it's going to be wind now
Right.
that I'm
Well,
getting my hopes up for
there's no
it.
way they release Faris as the water unit and don't give an accompanying Esper in
Right?
2023 to go with it. Like, yeah, you have to. No, looking forward to it for sure. And we did get other news on the other Final Fantasies there too, where we're getting MA2s and 140 upgrades for Final Fantasy 4 and 13 and 15, which again I haven't done a deep dive on, but I am absolutely loving because obviously those characters have kind of been lost in the power creep. Even the 13 ones are still around, don't get me wrong, Snow obviously and Lightning to some degree, but even them have started to fade. The fact that we're not going to see them prevalently for 6 months, but are going to get a revisitation, I love. But Final Fantasy 4 and 15 in particular, those characters definitely could use some love.
No, I loved this news. This was probably I'm more excited about this than Final Fantasy V, to be honest.
Same.
I haven't looked at all of the upgrades yet. I know that there's some information in terms of some of the abilities, but I think we can dive more into that stuff next week when we actually have a firm grasp on the data when it's released in the game. But I mean, Final Fantasy 15, like Noctis and Prompto and those guys, and 13, like you said, Lightning and Snow, those ones aren't even that old. So
No.
it's nice that we're not going to need to be waiting forever for these upgrades, and that they're going to be, usable in the game here in short order.
Yeah, I mean, you say the word usable, but we'll see how that works out with Prompto. I've never seen him used
Uh,
ever.
yeah, that's a rough one.
No, but either way, we'll know more once we get more info and we can dive a little deeper. Which brings us to the fourth section here, which is the Leonis Town Square, the Q&A portion. We did get 4 awesome questions from you, and we'll go through these as best we can. So the first question here is, what character from the story that hasn't been announced yet would you like to see be released? Anyone come to mind for you, JB?
I think my number one it would probably be Melnia. I
Oh,
think she's
yes.
a total badass, and I think that I mean I'd kind of always hoped that she would be an Earth unit, maybe an Earth gunner, maybe somebody that could go along with Rugia. Aside from her, maybe like Lady Bronwell would be
Oh, yeah.
another one would be kind of cool.
Yep.
And then maybe like I really want to see like the young Sodaly and Eld and Helena. I'd love to see those skins too.
Those
How
would be
about
very
you?
interesting. I have like a weirdly odd soft spot for Burrell, who is like the dude with the hat from, oh god, what's Jaden's Kingdom, whatever it is. No, yeah, yeah. He's just like a cool story unit that I didn't expect to be like a good character, but he somehow is. My big thing is I want to make sure that they release a character, and this being a gotcha, they're going to be very strong. That they match their lore, if that makes sense. There's a lot of characters that are in the game that I don't think lore-wise are very strong. So I would hate for them to be like new meta-defining unit when they're really just kind of some no-name in the game. So if I'm kind of having that, preface there, I do think Grifford is a really interesting one. He was actually on my 2022 list that I did with you. That he is
Yeah.
this like, I don't know how they didn't do anything with him, but Jaden was like, he's this like secret weapon warrior that's gonna like turn the whole war, and I don't think he ended up doing anything really. but but they obviously hyped him up, so I'm like kind of intrigued. So I'm curious what they do with that. And you made a good point. Lady Bronwell, who's in the current story, I think is a really good one. But yeah, lots to pick from. Yeah, all right. So that brings us to our second question here. How do you think people should approach building in a semi-competitive environment now with Transcendence and Reincarnation? We've talked a little bit about this, but there's a slight spin on this question. For the personal context of the asker, they're in the top 100, aiming for top 50. They're constantly torn between building out other elements or building up a specific element and just kind of balancing that. So do you have any thoughts on that in particular?
I mean, just based on kind of the limited info that we have here, it sounds like they're a dark main, like that's kind of the one they gravitate towards and maybe have built up the most. In that case, you probably have pulled Sephiroth, and maybe you have some of those meta units. That's great. At that point, I would say start investing into another element, a secondary element, or maybe a tertiary element, and try to get those into a competitive spot where you might feel good about rolling out that team. I know he specifically mentioned Skahal. That's obviously a great one. He
Yep.
doesn't have his 140 yet, but he can still compete. He's still a good unit. But I think that he loses a lot of his power if you don't have Resnick to go with him. So that's I think that they're going to be a pair that you'd want to roll out together.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to give kind of a roundabout answer to this. Just because the goal is stated that they're top 100 aiming for top 50, I'm going to throw you a curveball. It doesn't actually matter about the team you're building. When you talk about guild rising, the sum of its parts is way more important than what you do as an individual. If you're looking to have your guild rise 50 ranks, you need 20 people. You don't need all 30, but you need 20 people to be on the same page in terms of, okay, guys, we're going to do this kind of element today on defense. We're going to try to do this on offense. We're going to try to simulate some stuff. And then when it comes to the Guild War battles, you have someone who's like a real good caller and can do their research on who the enemy teams are. And you're properly designating who's attacking. So you're limiting your crashes. That is literally like 1,000 times more important than what you personally build or like what you and your like 2 friends might build. Because the 3 of you are not going to, over the course of the game, make your guild rise 50 ranks. It's the coordination and the leadership that's really going to do that for you, at least in my opinion. So keep building however you want, but the coordination is far more impactful in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Cool. All right, so that brings us to question number 3. Do you prefer having future sneak peeks from JP, or would you enjoy the game more if we were caught up with it? I know my answer. I think we're probably the same on that.
So I'll take that one. So I mean, this is kind of what I built my whole channel on YouTube about, was looking into the future of JP. So I mean, maybe I have a little bit of bias here, but that's a big part of how I geek out in this game, is kind of looking at what's coming next and kind of thinking about where I'm going to diverge and kind of what moves I'm going to make, as time goes on. So that lens into the future I have is invaluable for us, not only in that we can kind of get that information early, but that helps us plan out and spend our resources in more efficient ways, which you can't really you can't really underestimate it.
Yeah, and that's the point I was going to go off of, that to stay at the top of the game and what we do for like time and money in this game, being able to see what's coming up ahead and manage my like personal finances to accommodate for that is massively important. I can't imagine having the reincarnation system dropped on me and I've never seen it before and it's brand new, and now we have to like figure it out real time, who to invest in, who to not, what do I spend money on, what do I not. Like that would just like, I would bankrupt all of us. I can't, like, props to JP for having the financial wherewithal to do that. That would absolutely kill my game if I had to like be on the cutting edge and spend to keep up the way they have. Good. And that leads us to our 4th and last question. So what were your favorite and least favorite metas? Obviously there's a whole variety of them. We had talked last week about a former Mont meta with the Berserk bomb, with him just kind of kamikazing and ooga booga into the front row and just taking everyone out with him. Yeah, do you have any favorites or least favorites here?
So, I mean, I think we touched on a little bit about this last week with some of our favorite units, but my favorite was the King Mont Berserk meta, like when that was in full swing, like maybe when you had mixed King Mont and Dark, and kind of early on when he came out. That was definitely one of my favorites. This current fire meta is definitely up there. I'm really, really loving it. I've been having a lot of fun with the game. In terms of like least favorite, I have 2 ones that really stick out for me. One of the very first metas in this game was Engelbert Ayaka. And if you didn't have like Mediana just to like bomb them, like you were gonna lose that match. If you were trying to bring any sort of physical damage dealers against them, you were done. So that meta kind of stuck around for a little while, and I didn't love it. Aside from that, I really disliked not so much the meta itself, like with Elena, but just how long that it lasted. And I mean, obviously she's still being used in the game, but she was just oppressive for way, way too long. And I feel like Gumi didn't even know what to do for a long time to stop her.
I'm totally on with you. So I'm going to piggyback off that. That's probably my least favorite meta. If only for your point you just made, how long it went on. There wasn't any good way to beat it, because everyone always talked about Atlanta being like, oh, she's the greatest unit ever. But it wasn't just her. It was all 3 of them working in conjunction, where Engelbert also had courage. You couldn't essentially at that time dispel as often as you can now. So getting around that was nearly impossible. To kill him fast enough that you could then kill Elena. Not even talking about Jaden having the kind of unique at that time spirit scaling missile attacks, that all of a sudden you had to like start building spirit values, and there was no way to take it out. All 3 of them worked in perfect conjunction. The chaining potential wasn't there in other elements. They also had an edge up there. You had multi-uses of courage, and Jaden would have zombie mask, and it was almost just a cancer for too long, and there was no way around it. So the length of time, I agree, is what made that probably my least favorable, because there really wasn't any counterplay to it. It was who built the better light team.
The whole speed factor too was was crazy.
Right. She'd AoE agility your team down, and she's obviously super fast. And the Bahamut vision card, their vision card synergy was like off the charts good. No other element was even close to touching the unit AoE resistance and the agility what they had for opportunities. So yeah, that was definitely my least favorite for that. I don't know if I have a favorite, to be honest. I think honorable mention for my favorite might have actually been the brief Celeste meta that was here with water, because there was such a fun way to be like, all right, well, like, what magic is not reflectable? And okay, limit break, she can't do that. So there was like a little more in like the chess matchup, and it was just long enough, and Astrius was just good enough without being broken. And obviously, Velis was kind of that Chaos Odin synergy with ice and water. That there was a couple you could bring like some fire into things. There was some new multi-element play to it that I thought was really interesting. That for as brief as it was, I think it was one of my more favorites. But I tend to not like metas just because I don't know. I just don't like metas. I'm not a fan. I like going off the beaten
Well,
path.
I mean, it's nice when things don't stick around long enough that they get exhaustive.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Cool.
agree.
So excellent. Well, that wraps up everything we had today for the Leonis report, episode 6. Obviously, a lot to cover and more to come too as as Full Metal Alchemist gets its further releases with what we're going to see with King Bradley and with Roy Mustang. And I'm sure we're going to get some global exclusive announcements in the next couple of weeks. We'll see what happens. But that's it for now. JB, if you want to give a little sign off here.
Yeah, guys. So good luck to anybody who's going for Alphonse tomorrow and the Vision card. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week.
Sounds great. Take care, and we'll talk to you all soon.